the day. We're together and now we're here to say, united we will be the change.
Hello and welcome to Above and Beyond, bridging the gap to inclusivity and inclusion. I'm your host, Celeste Licorish, and today's show is about one of the things that's a great thing for kids everywhere, and it's going to camp. I'm pleased to have John Spazzato and Karen Hartnett from CYO, Catholic Youth Organization, and they're here to talk to us about Camp Marydale and all of the wonderful things that happen to make a camp experience for kids. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Celeste.
I'll start with you, John. Tell
Sure.
me a little bit about your position at CYO and your work.
Sure. My current position is the Executive Director of the agency. I've had the good fortune of being employed by the agency full-time for 30 years, so I have done virtually every job from garbage to Executive Director.
Wow, that's awesome.
So it's good. So it gives me a wholesome understanding of the operations and the function of the entire agency, from athletics to camping to ministry that we do as well.
So those are mostly the three things that you do: are athletics, camping, ministry?
And ministry. That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
And this being our summer months is arguably our busiest time.
Yeah.
The volume of youth that come through the CYO, through Camp Brebeuf and Camp Marydale, are numbers that are astonishing.
So tell me a little bit about the history of Camp Marydale. How long has it
Certainly.
been going on, and where did it start?
No problem. Camp Marydale started in 1963.
Wow.
It was originated in Puslinch, Ontario, which is just outside of Cambridge, up Highway 6. And that was basically our home from 1963 to 2003. Wow. And in 2003, in 2002, we had to make a decision to move. It was a tired infrastructure. Mm-hmm. As a result, we all remember Walkerton and the water issues that they had. The government handed down regulations that we had to put a small waterworks system into this facility.
And you would have had to fund that yourself?
Yeah, and it came at a price tag, a substantial price tag. Mm-hmm. And keeping in mind, we had two facilities. We had a day camp, Marydale, and we had Camp Brebeuf. So our board of directors of the time made a decision that we would invest the funds into Camp Brebeuf as far as the water system, the infrastructure, with the feeling and the notion that because of the tired infrastructure at Marydale and because of the lack of accessibility, whereas we hang our hats on accessibility and serving the marginalized, it required, to bring us up to a level of acceptance, we would have to invest a substantial amount of money. So the board at the time, as I mentioned, made the decision to shut it down and rebuild and build a new facility, which we are currently sitting on, which is called Marydale Park.
Okay, and Karen, you are the Director of Operations at Camp Marydale.
Yes, I am.
And so tell me about your role and how long you've been involved and what you do.
Yeah, so I've been around CYO my whole life. My mom worked back at CYO at the old site, and so she put me into camp knowing that I loved kids. So from the time I was old enough, I was going there. I'm in my 19th summer with the camp, and I'm actually celebrating my 10th summer this year as director of Camp Marydale. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, so quite a while.
So you've grown up.
I've grown up there. Yeah. Born and raised in camp, born and raised through the CYO. So so I'm really lucky. So yeah, like John said, summer months now. So busy time, fun time. Lots going on at the camp now.
So one of the things that makes Camp Marydale great is that it's completely inclusive. So no matter what your level of ability or disability, Camp Marydale is a place that welcomes everyone. So tell me a little bit about how you got into having a totally inclusive camp.
Certainly. We basically, in 1972, the directors, the executive director and the program director at the time recognized that there was a need. And we introduced a program called our one-to-one program, where it was one camper and with one counselor. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't anything that was not unheard of, but what was unheard of is the integration component. Okay. Whereas if you came onto that facility in 1972, you wouldn't know who had special needs and who required assistance versus any other child of ability. And that's kind of what we were really proud of. That we were able to integrate directly into the mainstream program and provide them with the same camping experience that that all others would have. And
that was
again,
very forward thinking for 1972.
very much so.
Because I
in
can
19
remember at that time things were very kind of separate and segregated for kids with different
yeah,
abilities.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
So the forefathers of the CYO were very open-minded, and they jumped on something that was very important, and obviously showed the importance of the value of youth.
Yeah.
And of course, given everyone the ability that and each belong to that programming and have the accessibility to it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it started. That is how it started.
Yeah.
And it, of course, it's morphed into something bigger across the country and across the world, as everyone sees the importance of that level of integration.
Well, that sense of belonging, you know, when you we talk about celebrating differences, but if you can really create environments where everyone gets the chance to celebrate who they are and be themselves and just have a wonderful experience, that's one of the most important things.
Absolutely.
So Karen, I want to ask you about the camp itself, like what the camp experience is like, some of the amenities, some of the things that happen at Camp Marydale.
Yeah, so the amazing thing, and again, that rebuild that the board recognized needed to happen. And again, with my experience of being around for a long time, I went through a really cool transition of being a part of it and kind of watching it happen.
Yeah.
And again, accessibility is now such a big thing, but you know, that even 5-6 years ago when we were building Marydale Park, it was still newer.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of discussion with people of all ages and all abilities, and we really wanted to build a place that was for everybody and that was barrier free. And so now, you know, people come, and even I say all the time, I take it for granted that I work there, because there's so many features that almost would go unnoticed. So when we were asking, you know, all these different age abilities, what would help you have a good time? What would help you with your experience? What would break those barriers for you?
Yeah.
Because I am able-bodied. I can see, I can hear. What we got back and that we were able to implement was really cool. So the wash house, which I'm often asked when people say, that's just washrooms in that middle building there, because it's so massive.
Yeah.
That was built because somebody said, give me natural light, because if I'm going inside to pee for 5 minutes and I'm coming back outside into the natural sunlight, the artificial light plays tricks on my eyes. And so there's massive, you know, windows everywhere, and so these giant big 40-foot roofs. But they also said, if I'm claustrophobic and you can't give me space beside me, put it above me and I won't feel so crowded.
Right.
So when we have 300 children changing for the pools, it doesn't feel crowded inside of those change rooms because the ceilings are so tall. You know, and a visually impaired person said, I can see shadowing. So if you make the outside walls different colors and you tile the floors with a trim that's a darker shade than the rest of the floors, I can see when I'm coming to a wall. And so these little, you know, minute
They
details.
seem little to us.
Right.
But if you take the time to be thoughtful, and I mean, I think it's so important that you recognize your ability, so your privilege in terms of things that you can take for granted, and to reach out and say what would be helpful for people. I think
and
that's
to
really
ask
important.
instead of to assume, right? And so we were really lucky. The things that we learned, you know, that we didn't know was really cool. And so now we have those in place where people can come, and then they don't need. We have children who are in wheelchairs that before at our sites needed a one-on-one support worker, and they've been able to transition off of not needing any support at our site because they can wheel themselves around because the paths are paved, and because all they have to do is touch a button and the washroom door will open for them, and push a lock and it will lock for them.
That's
and
amazing.
So really little details that we were able to find out and learn about, and now they don't have those barriers and they really have the independence, whereas other places, even schools, the mall, they don't have that luxury. They have to have a support. And so it's a really cool opportunity to watch. And for me, it's been cool to be able to even make that phone call to a parent and say, I think we can transition them away from a worker, or I think they can become a counselor here because they have the ability. And even parents' reaction to that is amazing.
They would be totally shocked.
Yeah.
Hold that thought. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with Karen and John after this break.
GO/JHL action continues in January when the Hamilton Kilty Bees make a rare Thursday night appearance right here on Cable 14 in a matchup against the Fort Erie Meteors. The Kilties have a slight 3-2 edge in the season series, with 4 of the 5 games being won by the home team. Coverage gets underway on Thursday, January the 10th at 7 p.m. live on Cable 14 and Cable14now.com.
And we're back with John and Karen from CYO, where we're talking about Camp Marydale and all of the wonderful activities and operations that happen for their day camp. So before the break, we were talking a little bit about what it's been like for you, Karen, as a counselor and a person who grew up there and all of the activities that happen. So I want to turn to what it used to be like when you were a person with a disability going to camp and how that's changed over time. So John, maybe we can start with you. You can give a little bit of a history of what's happened.
Yeah, again, as I noted, I've had the good fortune of being working for the agency for a number of years. And even as a student going through school, I was employed. And I remember that we were very passionate about what we did and working with children, especially children with special needs. And one of our good friends and a good friend of the CYO, Anthony Frazina, we share and we joke about this quite often as a story. Anthony had mobility issues, and it was difficult for Anthony to get around because it was a field, or we had hills and we had gravel stone paths or just grass paths to get through, and it was very challenging for some of our campers, especially Anthony. So what we did back then, we thought we were resourceful. We were teenagers. We got a wheelbarrow. Yeah. We padded it with some cushions, and we picked up Anthony. We put Anthony in. And that in itself was an activity. That in itself was fun. That in itself was, but it was also a means to get Anthony from point A to point B so that he would be involved, fully integrated into the program with the mainstream.
So the kids would be running along, doing however they're getting
and we're
there.
right up there with them.
Yeah.
And, you're bouncing around a little bit, but Anthony was a good sport, and we had a lot of fun with it.
Creating that sense of belonging and inclusion and really making it invisible. I mean, he's just getting there.
That's right. Yeah. And some people would frown on that and say, oh, you can't do that, you couldn't do that. And certainly today we have different resources. We have the accessibility to all-terrain vehicles is certainly more accessible. And that's one of those wonderful things that have changed in our society, not necessarily just the CYO, but in our society, the mobility issues and the ability to get a child from point A to point B.
Has changed completely. So I'll turn it over to you, Karen. So tell me about some of the amenities, some of the things that happen at Camp Marydale today to make it more inclusive for kids with special needs to get from point A to point B, or to swim, or whatever's happening at camp.
Everything, yeah, and that's what John said. I mean, the luxury that we had, and again, we were building the facility, is there's so much out there. And so part of it was we didn't just want to build a facility that was barrier-free. We wanted to make sure that every activity was barrier-free. So every activity they went to, any child could do, and therefore they didn't feel that restriction, they didn't feel that difference when they were there. And so the kids today get to come and, there's ramps up onto the archery platform, and there's a shooting guard that's lower so that they can shoot over it versus up high, and so they get to do archery. The dock has a bumper on it, so they can wheel right onto the dock off the ramp. They don't have to worry about just drifting off into the water. There's a bumper there. They load into the canoes, and they can go out and paddle around with their counselors. Again, the paths are all paved so they can get around on the hiking trails. We have access to all-terrain vehicles. We built a beautiful beach slope entry pool so that the kids can get in. And the thing is that we've noticed, and it's kind of a cool thing, is we built this place keeping the special needs population in mind because we really wanted it to be accessible, and yet it's actually become a luxury for all kids because the 4-year-olds can play the exact same activities as the 12-year-olds and still have fun. And, the kids who are afraid of water can play where it's just at their toe level, and they can go in where it's good for them. And mental health is becoming a big thing. And so working with kids who have anxiety on their level, and because it's got that very few features, they can do that, and they can get there, and, they can play along too. And so it's been really cool to see. We built this place accessible, but it really has become inclusive for everybody, no matter the age,
and
ability,
isn't that the goal,
anything.
Though? I mean, it should be something. I'm thinking the light in the bathrooms, everything would be beautiful no matter who's in there.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. Even for me, looking around, I'm like, wow, this is great. They weren't wrong, So all those activities about just being able to get outdoors. We're predominantly outdoor facility. We very rarely have the kids inside, which it doesn't happen much. But that was our goal, to be barrier-free, to be outside, to keep that traditional camping experience of the crafts and the sports and the archery and the boating alive, because so many kids don't get to experience that
Well,
anymore.
that's the thing. I mean, camping is such an integral part of your childhood if you can get it, and to remove the barriers so that it's accessible to everyone is really fantastic. Now, you had mentioned a one-to-one program that exists. Does that still exist today?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's, again, it's Karen can speak to the popularity of it,
Okay.
And with true numbers. But I believe when registrations went live this year, correct me if I'm wrong, it sold out within 48 hours, or were you a little longer?
So that was actually our new program that we created. So every time we say this is a problem. It's a good problem, but it's a problem. And so what do we do about it? And that's where we're at now. We've got this barrier-free facility, but it's becoming popular. It's becoming spoken about. I have parents who are, we're sold out, and they say, I told all my friends about it and forgot to register myself. The actual one-to-one program, which we take 250 campers that we provide a one-on-one support worker to at no additional fee. In the summer, that program had sold out within a month. But our campers were aging out, and parents were saying, where do they go now? So again, I mentioned that.
Meaning, like, what's the
so
age
yeah,
range?
so once they hit age 12, they're technically too old to be campers, and so they could move in to be a counselor in training, and then move toward being a counselor. But some, they're not interested in that. They just really want a 1 week. They still want to be a camper at camp experience, and so what are we going to do about that? So we created a program that was a graduate program of our one-to-one program where they could still come back and enjoy camp for a week. And so that program we started a couple of years ago now, but that program was sold out within 48 hours.
A name, that program?
Yes, we call it our wilderness program.
Okay.
So yeah, and it's become very popular. Like John said, within 48 hours, it sells out of opening, and an extensive wait list on that list. And so again, both programs, we say, it's a good problem to have, but how do we do more? How do we help more? Where do we go from here to ensure that everybody has the opportunity to come and has the opportunity to play, like you said, be a kid, have that experience, and really be included.
Yeah, no, that's really great. That's really fantastic. So tell me about a day in the life of Marydale campers. So it's a day camp, so you're not sleeping over. Does a bus come and pick kids up, or do the parents drop them off? How does that work?
Yeah, so we bus all of our kids in. So again, a really cool feature, and for me, it's a crazy time building our buses together and making our routes all work and our runs work. But again, it's talking about everybody. Everybody gets on a bus and everybody gets off a bus. Right. And it doesn't matter if you're coming from a house of poverty, a house where you have accessibility issues, or a house where you are wealthy. They all get on the bus together and they all get off together as kids. All of our staff get on the bus and get off the bus together as well. And so it's a really cool thing to see them all kind of unload together and load up together, and nobody knows where the other one's coming from. You're just going to camp together. So that's a really cool thing. So they get off the buses and we do our kind of opening ceremonies, and then they'll break off into their segments. So at Marydale, we have every child gets to swim for an hour a day. And so they'll go swimming. They have their typical rotations that they have to go to that we assign them. So their archery, their boating, their crafts. Things alter with the ages. So some kids do fishing, whereas other kids play in what we have is a mud kitchen. So it's a big outdoor sandbox, and then a big outdoor play kitchen that was built for us. So the little guys love the mud kitchen.
They're making mud pies
exactly,
and whatever else,
and playing in the dirt. How often does that happen these days again, right?
So
And the older campers would do more team building initiatives, and so doing that, the more leadership role stuff like that. They all go for hikes. We have campfires and things like that. So they all do different activities. We have camper choice rotations where the kids get to choose from a list of activities, either to repeat or to try something else that maybe isn't on that list, like frog catching, or doing orienteering with a compass and different things like that. So they have a camper choice. And then they have free time as a group where the group gets to decide what they do. So sometimes they'll go on adventures, sometimes they'll build forts, do different things like that, or again, repeat activities that they really want to do as a group. So kind of lots going on. And then Fridays are a little bit different for us. We do our big closing ceremony. So
because people are together for a week, so if you come to day camp, you come for a week together.
We come for a week, so they all come, and again, we split them off into their age groups and such. But on Fridays, what's become popular is the older section. So if they're kind of 8 and older, they go out on Friday, they build a fire, and they actually cook hot dogs over the fire. And so that's a really cool, and I didn't realize actually until last week, we had that stormy week all week, and the campsites were flooded, and so we couldn't cook out. The wood was wet, they were flooded. I was worried that kids weren't going to eat lunch if we didn't, so we cooked for everybody.
Yeah.
And the amount of kids who were upset or kind of squawking at me, or a couple crying, "What do you mean I can't cook my hot dogs over the fire? This is the only place I get to cook over a fire." And I'm like, wow, like it's a cool thing to watch, that it's becoming tradition for these guys that on Fridays they get to build a fire and cook on it.
And that would be part of one of the highlights of coming
a highlight
to camp.
for them. Yes, that was really cool. And then we do a big closing campfire. We have a big bonfire. We sing songs to entertain them on the bus ride. They rewrite songs to be about camp, and we have a big competition, and that's been going back years before I was even a camper.
Awesome.
And they each come up and they perform their bus song they've been working on all week, and then we award a bus. They actually get a little award for winning the bus song competition of the week. So that's become a highlight for them as well.
Yeah. We've got to take another break.
For sure.
We will be right back with more after this break.
Sunday afternoon, January the 6th, the OHL tonight wraps up a 3-game homestand for the Bulldogs from the First Ontario Centre. It's the Niagara Ice Dogs in once again, and they've given the Bulldogs some fits this season. Loaded up with OHL top scorer Jason Robertson, the Ice Dogs are on a rampage, but the Bulldogs have had their number in this building once before, and you can catch all the action live in HD right here on Cable 14, beginning at 2 p.m.
And welcome back to Above and Beyond, where we're having a great conversation with Karen and John from CYO. So before the break, we were talking about the camp experience and how wonderful it is. And now I'd like to move on to another camp that you guys have called Camp Brebeuf.
Yes.
So tell me, John, a little bit about Camp Brebeuf and what it does. And
Camp Brebeuf is our residential camp.
Okay.
It's located in Rockwood, Ontario. And it is a camp that we have outdoor education, environmental education, and summer camp experiences. Oh, yeah. And again, it's an old facility. Mm-hmm. We've been responsible for the operations since 1972. The camp has been in existence since 1952.
Oh wow, so it's an older camp.
Yeah, it's an older, which comes with obviously infrastructure.
Yes.
And in order for us to run a safe and successful program, we must maintain the standards that we're accustomed to, or that we believe our parents are accustomed to as well. Safe environment, and we've been very successful with that.
So it's an overnight camp. So how long do campers typically stay when they stay for overnight?
In the summer camp, they arrive Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and they depart at 4 o'clock on Friday.
Oh, wow.
So it's a 6-day stay.
Nice. So do you get crossover from people who've been to Marydale that want to do an overnight experience?
Yes.
Because it's a completely different thing. You've got homesickness, you're away. So.
Yeah. And the residential experience isn't for everyone.
No.
It's tough, and especially as a youngster, a young boy or girl of 7 years old.
So what's the age range for it?
We'd start at 7
at 7
to 13.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're pretty young, and you're away from home, and it's difficult. But our staff they're remarkable, and talk about the ultimate of empowerment.
Yeah.
When you hand over the responsibility of the most treasured thing that we can think of as our children. And we hand our children over to what we would consider other children, a 17 or 18-year-old. But the training and the rigor that we apply to that is bar none.
Yeah.
And we're mandated, we're governed by the Ontario Camping Association.
Yeah.
So we have standards and accreditations that we must comply to.
Yeah.
And we do it very well.
And again, this camp is accessible?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Much like the original Marydale facility that we established in 1963, it does have some challenges, but we're investing in the facility, and we are changing so that we can have an agency that not only has Camp Brebeuf, it'll have Camp Marydale. They're both based on the same footprint of accessibility.
Yeah, and that will take time and
It's
talent and treasure to develop.
Yeah, and we're in the midst of a very strong capital campaign.
Okay, well, hold that thought for a second. I want to switch gears one more time before we get to that.
For sure.
When kids go to camp, it can be a life-changing experience for them. And I wonder if you have any stories to share of kids who've gone through the camping program, what it's meant for them, what it's meant for parents. Like, what is the impact that this is having for kids?
Yeah, for sure. And from both facilities. But for me, my phone rings daily where I hear feedback and thank yous and letters coming in, especially this summer, but all year round. Registration opens again. How do my kids come back? Because this is the experience. This year, and I passed it all around the office. There was a voicemail from a parent who said, "Wow, I heard things, but I never thought my son with autism would actually go to camp and play like a child and play with other kids and come home smiling and be happy to go somewhere. My child's never happily gone to the bus. My child's never woken up in the morning themselves because they want to go somewhere." Yeah. And so hearing that, the passion and the emotion in the parent's voice when they leave those messages, it's amazing, for us to hear.
And what are the kinds of changes that you see in the kids themselves? Like, I'm imagining there's a big difference between day 1 and day 5 even.
Exactly, yeah. And that's, with Brebeuf, I think they really, because they're living there, they really see kids, come out of their shells by that Wednesday, Thursday. Yeah. But for us as well, and this summer, I'll never forget, we had a really difficult case, and I called the parent to say, we're having a hard time. He's hitting staff. He's biting staff. He was nonverbal. Yeah. And she immediately started crying. "You're going to kick him out again." I said, "No." I said, I'm calling because he's upset. This is his way of telling us that he's not happy. So what can we do? And I said, he'll get there. He's never been on a bus before, and you're putting him on an hour bus ride. We bus our kids in from Burlington to Grimsby to Waterdown,
so
quite a catchment, Caledonia into Hamilton. So I said, he's not used to a bus ride. He's never been to this site. He's never been to an outdoor camp. There's a lot of factors. Yeah. He wants to explore, and because of safety reasons, he's not allowed to, and so he's acting out in a way that he's expressing himself. So he'll get there, but you need to know that he's not comfortable. We need to come up with a plan. Right. And she called me back on Friday saying, "I haven't heard from you today, and it's lunchtime." I said, "Yeah, he's out playing with the other kids." She said, "What?" I said, "He's out with the other kids." So, for us to watch that happen with kids, a little boy today was in my office bawling his eyes out because he missed mom. He's going through, there's a lot going on at home, I found out when I called home, and sobbing. And talked to mom. We chatted through, we encouraged him back. He went swimming with his group, came back to my office with a giant smile on his face. "Can I call mom again? I want to tell him I'm having the best day of my life." Oh. So those things, even to see in that moment, that minute,
And even that family support, like when you
huge.
Called that mom and she was worried, "Well, you're going to kick my child out of camp," like that.
That's what they're used to. That's their reality.
They're not used to inclusion,
right.
And you're creating an environment where they can sort of breathe out a little bit. And
We're trying.
No, that is fantastic. You guys are doing amazing, amazing stuff.
Thank you.
So during the year, you raise funds. You've got a capital campaign you had started to mention before I wanted to jump into stories.
Okay. We have a lot of fun things going on.
Yeah.
We have, which I hope to speak to, an annual fundraiser. But currently, we are in the midst of a capital campaign. It's a $3 million project, and we're over 2/3 of the towards our goal.
Yeah. And this is to redo to help improve us for Brebeuf.
This is all infrastructure, and it's all accessible.
Oh,
and so it's all based on the accessibility. We had a kitchen dining hall which we're in the process of completing. Yeah. That has been a 7-month project. It extended beyond the time that we were hoping for many reasons. The remote location to just some of the accessibility issues, and there's different challenges for that level of construction.
So we've got about a minute left. I want people to know how they can, what your fundraiser is and how they can get involved.
Our annual fundraiser, which we're well into our 30th year. We celebrate in February, and it happens every year, and the monies are directly for staffing and infrastructure. So all the funds that we receive go towards supplementing and supporting our staff costs, so that we are not charging the parent additional. So the parent that comes with a child with special needs is paying the exact same as the child that's coming without needs.
Okay. Now, how can people get in touch with you for more information?
Certainly. Our fund developer, his name is Mel Leggett, and Mel is...
And I think we're going to have his information on the screen. So.
So you'll see it on the screen. It's Mel Leggett at CYO. His email address is mel.leggett at cyo.on.ca with a phone number to follow that.
Perfect.
And we would love any support as possible.
That's great. Karen, John, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for so much
Thanks,
for joining
Celeste.
us on Above and Beyond.
Of course.
Thank you.
So before we close, we have a quote of inspiration. Infuse your life with action. Don't wait for it to happen. Make it happen. Make your own future, make your own hope, make your own love. And whatever your beliefs, honor your Creator, not by passively waiting for grace to come down from upon high, but by doing what you can to make grace happen yourself right now, right down here on earth. And that's a quote by Bradley Whitford. I'm your host, Celeste Licorish, and thank you for joining us on Above and Beyond. See you next time.
On your way, walk past strangers' faces every day. Share a smile, it's all you need. You'll be just fine, you'll be alright. Put your hand in mine, and as things change, we're growing strong. We'll rise above it all together.